My name is Average Joe.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky.
Hey, how are ya? My name is Ben, and I am a movie buff.
My name is Asian Jon.
My name is Pixel Patch.
And my name is Dr. What, and I'm a total nerd, but you wouldn't know it if you met me.
And I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
I am one part video game nerd, one part comic book nerd, but all parts movie nerd.
And I am at best a casual fan, but I do love learning. I know very little about nerd culture, and I'm on a journey to learn and troll people along the way.
I'm a joyful geek with an expertise in gaming, both tabletop and video.
My expertise is in mathematics, history, of course medicine, and all things nerddom.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, manga, comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Nintendo, Cinematic Universes. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, Cinematic Multiverses, Mega Christmas, Strangest Franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast on our 250th episode, where we still continue to put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
Except now we have as many episodes as there should be Pokemons.
Is it Pokemons or is it Pokemon? Pokemon?
Pokemon.
I mean, it's short for Pocket Monster, and the plural of monster is monsters, so I would say Pokemon.
Pokemankind.
Well, we are celebrating 250 episodes of Bat Jarring today, and I am delighted to obviously be here with Beef Pork Ribs, but also the original co-host of the Bat Jar Podcast has come out of retirement in a sense to join us. So Asian Jon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Average Joe, and I see, and whoever you are, I see BPR, and you said it's beef pork ribs.
That's right.
Awesome, cool, nice to meet you-ish.
Well,
online.
Hardcore fans of the show would remember that Beef Pork Ribs' first guest appearance on the podcast was your last episode as the regular co-host when we talked about One Piece.
For far too.
Oh.
Do you even remember what One Piece is?
Yeah, no, One Piece. Isn't it about that that pirate anime or whatever?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
very
good.
I do have a good memory. And if I recall correctly, Beef Pork Ribs, did you have those crazy cool Japanese shoes that were like blocks of wood that you wear?
Oh yeah, I did and still do. It's not the same pair, but
No.
They got a little.
Is there any I don't think those are like a better alternative to standard shoes, are they? Is it just more of a fun thing? Because I doubt it's practical.
Yes and no. They are
and
more.
I believe it's cultural appropriation of my people.
Yeah, well, it's also useful because your people happen to be some of the only ones who made sandals that weren't made out of leather or plastic, which are materials I really don't like on my feet, but I like wearing sandals. Actually, I don't like wearing sandals that much. I just hate wearing shoes. So, wood or straw both are traditional materials for Japanese sandals. So I went with the wood ones because straw also isn't that comfortable, I find.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Cool. I mean, and they also gave you a pretty good lift, like 3 inches in height or something like that.
Yeah, and when you're not too tall, that's something you need sometimes.
And I'm not that tall either, so that would be helpful.
There are much taller ones that only have one tooth in the middle, that are apparently meant for mountain climbing or cheerleading. Pretty
Oh wow.
pretty fun stuff. But they're like
Mountain climbing or
it's-
cheerleading? Yeah, just those two things that are so similar that there is a shoe specifically for those two things.
well, there is in Japan.
Oh my goodness. All right. So you two did get the opportunity to meet in person once when we recorded that infamous episode, because it was the first time. I'm doing just podcast trivia right now. That was the first time we ever did the power transfer of one co-host to another, because Pixel Patch was also in that episode, and Beeper, you witnessed the first power transfer of the show
I
from
did.
from
As I recall, whose basement was it in?
it was Asian John's at the time.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And that was shortly after our 100th episode, like October 2018 or November 2018, somewhere around then. So it's very poetic that we're celebrating our 250th episode with the three of us, because Asian Jon, you were the co-host of the show for the first 2 years of the show, basically. And then we had a year or so in there where it was Pixel Patch, Ben the movie buff, and Dr. What kind of all taking turns as co-host before Beef Pork Ribs here took over full-time January 2020. And we're coming up on almost 2 years now that you've been the co-host, if you can believe it, Beeper.
I really can't. Every time I like think about the podcast, it feels like something I started doing recently, even though I know it wasn't, because it was before the beginning of the pandemic, and that is no longer a recent event.
No kidding.
Sadly.
Yeah.
But, we get used to it. It's been fun so far.
So I had the opportunity during our 5th anniversary, which was like 3 weeks ago, to just reminisce a bit on how this podcast was started. But Asian Jon, from like your recollection, like how do you remember this podcast getting started?
Well, I remember that you had been talking about getting this podcast started for a while, and I think, well, being roommates might be one reason that we're in fact roommates at the time. One reason why I was a good candidate, and I think at the time we also thought it was kind of interesting, the idea that that you, AJ, were very much a geek. Let's be honest. You wear it proudly, and I'm a geek in other ways, I guess, but not so much in the entertainment milieu and in a lot of the areas that we end up talking about on the show. But we just thought it would be kind of fun. In a sense, I was a bit of a sounding board, getting educated on Geekland, because yeah, I mean, at least in this particular in the world of different forms of entertainment, and I'd say in a lot of ways things that are not as mainstream as just the blockbusters, but whether it was more obscure things in the superhero world, more just maybe a lot of anime, just all sorts of things. It was between that, and I think, I mean, although we've covered a lot, man. We've done musicals, everything from mainstream blockbusters to musicals to
Flash Gordon.
I mean, Flash Gordon, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've gone deep there. So, yeah, that was the idea, and it was just a fun thing to do. And while I was able to have that in my schedule as one of the many priorities of life, it was just like a cool thing to do and get going. And then we found out that at least some of our friends started listening, so that was cool. And yeah, the banter was fun, because I think a lot of the time I was just trolling, because I don't really know I just don't know what's going on half the time. And sometimes the topics, I'm not gonna lie, would just be so, for me, it was just so hard to pretend to be interested. And I would just like let you talk, and like in at least so that you could talk and not feel like you're talking to somebody who's falling asleep, I would like do my utmost to not look like I'm falling asleep in the conversations. And it wasn't you. You're not boring. It's all the topics that we talk about on the show that are boring.
I'll never forget in the first year of the show, you, in the middle of the episode, just pulled out your guitar and sang this like mix up of the Kyoryo Sentai Jurenja theme and the classic Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Jurenja. Yeah.
That
That was
and then
really,
that we
really
had
fun.
that recorded and it went to the show, and I
Yeah.
like fanboyed over your musical ability in that moment.
Oh, thank you. Hey, speaking of like the old days, the early days. I was out for brunch with a few with some friends over here today, and I was letting them know that I'm busy tonight. That I'm gonna be recording this awesome podcast episode, and I explained where the origins, and then I'm a co-founder or whatever, and excuse me. Um, and they were like, "Oh, what's it called?" And I said, "The Batjar Podcast." And everyone started getting their phones out and looking it up. And I read the little blurb, at least on Apple, and it's all about Average Joe and Asian Jon.
Oh,
So I'm gonna let you know. You should probably update your your little blurb there. Yeah,
He
whoopsie
should,
daisies.
Asian John should still get founder credits. The
No,
kind of
thanks.
thing that Zuckerberg wouldn't give anybody.
Yeah. Well, but on it, but probably in that blurb you could say, a podcast, started by Asian John, Average Joe and Asian John has gone through many, but it still says there, join us for episodes where Asian John and Average Joe, and it's like, no, that's not what you're doing, because
well, it is if you
although
start at
we
the
are now.
beginning, but
it is if you start at the beginning, yeah.
But
But
at
it was
least Apple,
it's the
it-
general description of the podcast, so.
The Asian John stands are going to be disappointed when they get to episode 100 then, or to the first episode I was in. So they'll be like, "Oh, where did he go? He is the only reason we listen to the podcast."
I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure you guys have gained quite the following in my absence.
I mean, I'm not tuned into the numbers enough. Average Joe, I think you're the only one who really.
I'm pretty
listens
sure
a lot.
Average Joe knows.
yeah, I feel like the numbers have kind of they've kind of stabilized. It's like that we're not doing better or worse than we were before, but we
Like
do
when
this
I
as a
was doing it, you
hobby
mean?
with no marketing budget. So I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
sort of to be expected.
Yeah, it's fun.
We've reached the people we will reach, and the only way. Although there is a potential untapped market, except they're very susceptible to change. One of my students in grade 7 last year discovered. I think I mentioned the podcast in passing, and then he found it and listened to like a few episodes. But I think he got over it pretty quickly because grade 7 boys, a little bit unfocused sometimes.
They
Yeah.
just don't know what they want.
And like Batman himself, this podcast certainly has looked different over the years. Asian John, you kind of spoke to the nature of the original gimmick being that you were a layman and I was the expert, and
Yeah.
symbolic
so what's the-
interactionism allowed for us to like watch the same movie and have wildly different reactions because we were coming
That's
at
right.
it from different points of view.
That's right.
But all the co-hosts I've had since you have been more geeky and more nerdy than you, but not about the same things
Yes.
as me. And that's where I think that social science experiment is still in effect, because like Beeper keeps saying he has Marvel fatigue and he's not really into the movies and he watches them mostly for his wife, whereas I'm still invested. So when we watch the movies and talk about them, there is still different vantage points, and we're coming at it from different perspectives, but they're not the same vantage points anymore. And the
I
character
see.
of Batman has gone through many different iterations and evolutions, and
Oh yeah.
some people like certain Adam West Batmans better, and some people like
Right.
Michael Keaton Batmans better, and some people like their Robert Pattinson Batman. So it's like that's okay that the show has looked a little different, and everyone has their favorites.
If
Yeah.
we're following that,
Beeper, are you? I take you for a bit of a Japanophile.
I mean, less than
Like,
I
is that
was.
your geek realm? Okay.
Less than I was, more than the average, I suppose. I have been trying to get Average Joe to cover more animes. I think there's like 2 or 3 in the bat jar, and we did actually cover JoJo's, didn't we?
We did, yes.
Yeah, which was a good accomplishment. But I don't know, vintage video games and some books. It was fun talking about Dune recently because Average Joe had not read it, and I have been a fan of that book for Yeah, probably a decade at least. So
Was the episode specifically the book, or did it coincide with the movie coming out?
no,
Kinda
it
comparing?
was specifically about the movie. I tried to cram in a few things
Mm.
about the book as well.
Gotcha. Or what about I think it was like a 90s computer game, a PC game that I remember playing.
We did not talk about Dune, grandfather of RTSs, but that could be interesting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, giving us more content, because I am amazed. Like, we're at episode 250 now, and as I look to the future, there's a live action Cowboy Bebop series coming out like next
No
week.
kidding. Live action. I wonder how that translates.
Yeah, John Cho is playing Spike.
Hmm.
There's a
this new
Foundation miniseries that I really want to watch, but I'm not sure where you can in Canada.
yeah, there's, even when it seems like we've covered so many things, there's still lots of things that are, and there's like this explosion of content. It's crazy. Like, they announced this week that the 90s X-Men animated series is coming back on Disney Plus in 2023, and I almost lost it when I found out. I was like, I can't believe this is the world we live in, where they can bring back the shows from my childhood. I was excited, but based on the expressions on your faces, you're like, oh yeah, I bet he was excited about that.
Ba-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-da-da-da. That's that one, right?
Yeah, that's that one.
Okay. I know the theme song. I think I've watched maybe 2 episodes, but
What?
you know.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. They should have Asian Jon do the music for it. He'd probably be able to play that song.
Okay, guys, literally for like a minute there, I couldn't hear you. So, hi. No, I had to switch like an audio setting because my ear was hearing something weird in it, and I wasn't sure what was going on. But just tell me what you were saying.
The 90s X-Men animated series is coming back on Disney Plus. They're making more episodes.
To making more episodes.
Yeah.
But obviously, I'm guessing just like update the quality of the animation and all that stuff.
So they're gonna try and replicate
but
the
try to keep it
designs.
pretty. But yeah, keep it pretty true in style and everything.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And I was complimenting you, saying that you could probably do the music for it, or at least you could probably do your own version of the theme song.
You're right. I am very good at things like that. Just kidding. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Let me know if they contact you, if one of their producers listens to the show and is looking for something.
Well, to celebrate 250 episodes of the Bat Jar, I thought it would be fun to kind of share a bit about ourselves in this particular conversation. And the kind of the theme here is talking about our own favorite movies. I hate it when people ask me that question, what's your favorite movie? Because it's really hard for me to give them an answer, because I like a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
originally, I think you said it would be a top 10, because top 5 is pretty hard too. I mean, I actually find that I do have a favorite movie, and it's a bit of a cop out. We'll get to that at some point, but like that one's pretty easy. But if I have to do like a top 5, top 10, it becomes exponentially harder.
Yeah, I think for the sake of this conversation, we can cap it at 5, and we'll
probably the thing that would make it hard to try to do bigger lists. It's the fact that how on earth are we supposed to talk about it within this time frame?
Yeah, so this is really a chance for people to get inside our heads and find out what movies resonate with us, because this isn't necessarily a list of like the best movies ever made. These are movies that, for whatever reason, are repeatable watches for us, that connect with us on a deeper level, that have stayed with us throughout the years. And I think it'd be popcorn style be best. We'll each take turns sharing one. I don't have a ranking of my top 5. These are just my top 5 favorite movies. If you guys did rank yours, then that's fine. But let's start with Beeper. What is one of your top 5 movies?
Okay, well, I was expecting the ranking to go on. So there are 2 spots, I think. There are 3 spots that have 2 movies on them, but because they're related. So I'll start with one that doesn't, and it is Jackie Chan's First Strike. A great movie. It's like, I like a lot of Jackie Chan movies. It was hard to pick one. I think this one is the one I pick mostly because it has a good mix of like solid stunts, good fight scene, and kind of just ridiculous storyline, and a little bit of Jackie being, Jackie.
It's a kung fu comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it starts in Ukraine and then ends in Australia. But there's actually nothing in between. It just goes from Ukraine to Australia.
Sounds like
kind of
his 80 Days movie.
Yeah. No.
Sounds like sounds like Roger Moore era, James Bond.
It's somewhat like that. I was torn kind of between that one and Who Am I? Who Am I is basically the Jason Bourne storyline, more or less, but with Jackie Chan playing the Jason Bourne type character, which is much funnier and a little campier.
So what maybe you said this and I missed it, but what is it about that movie that makes it stand out among the Jackie Chan movies?
The latter fight scene, for one thing. He fights a bunch of guys with a foldable ladder, and if you know anything about Jackie Chan movies, you know that that's going to be interesting. There's a fight scene in a shark tank where they both have knives, and they're basically, instead of trying to stab each other because it's underwater, they're just cutting each other so that the shark will smell the blood. And so they're constantly trying to like cover their wounds, and there's also, I don't know, there's also a, like, you talked about Roger Moore's era. There is actually a ski chase scene / stunt scene, which ends with Jackie Chan doing a jump, grabbing onto a helicopter, and then immediately dropping because the helicopter blows up. And you do, in fact, see him in the frame with the helicopter that explodes as he drops, 50 feet into a frozen river. So, some pretty extraordinary stunt. Not, it doesn't have his best stunts and it doesn't have his best fights, but I think it has, a good mix of everything.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, Asian Jon, what about you? What's one of your favorite movies?
Man, yeah, again, this is hard for me too, but I think the order I would go in isn't so much, let's say fifth favorite to favorite, but more maybe take some of the more the lighthearted things that are fun, and then go to what I think is great filmmaking and I appreciate on that deeper level. I think and again, this could, if I made the list a different day, it would change. So these are just movies that I think are great. Yeah, because I actually literally during this conversation I thought of another one. I was like, oh, maybe that should have been in there instead of this, but whatever. We'll just go.
I went through my collection today just to double check.
Yeah. I mean, man, there's just so many, right? There's so many great movies. I'm gonna go with Hook as one of my top 5. Now, I sometimes, as an adult, I do the test of nostalgia goggles, right? So I got to find out if I just liked it as a kid, and that if the magic was there because I was a kid, and it's larger than life, and maybe if I watch it again as an adult, it'll be like, that was terrible, kind of like Mighty Ducks 2. Huge regret watching it as an adult, but I've watched this several times, I guess. Maybe once every couple of years, I don't know. Let's average it at that as an adult. And every time I'm like, man, the practical effects, basically the world they created of Neverland was really, it was enveloping. Like you sense you were in the space, and that it was movie magic and just a really, really fun, feel good story. So that's what I really appreciate about Hook.
So that's an interesting one, because I've learned it came out the year I was born, and I've learned that it was actually not received well critically when it came out. People didn't like it, but it seems like it's really developed a cult following over the years, because I saw it on TV as a kid and I thought it was great.
Maybe there was sort of a purist thing around the story of Peter Pan. Because, to tell you the truth, the animated Peter Pan, I don't think is that great. The Disney classic one, I think it's okay. It's not one of the better ones, though.
My wife
Hook's
was
awesome.
Same opinion about that.
Yeah. I think she's right. I mean,
that and Alice in Wonderland, because she read both of them before seeing the movies.
Yeah. But I, of course, being a kid and seeing Hook, I didn't have the same sort of loyalty to the, to the age-old story. Well, not age-old, it's not that old, but the story of Peter Pan. It was like, no, to me that was like that was like the Peter Pan story for me in a lot of ways. Knowing that it was about him growing up and going back, but still, it feels so good. And Robin Williams was awesome in it, as was Dustin Hoffman and the many other actors in there. So there you have it.
And it laid the groundwork for the excellent Christopher Robin movie that came out in 2018.
Meh.
Oh, I love that movie.
Still haven't seen it.
Ah,
But I have like almost zero nostalgia for
Christopher
Winnie
Robin.
the Pooh.
That laid the ground for. Oh, interesting. Okay, yes, I really liked that movie. It was fun.
It's on
For some
Disney
reason,
Plus.
I'm still
Beeper.
thinking in Peter Pan. You know, it's cute. That's actually a good. I think you and your wife would have a nice snuggle to that film.
Well, that's
Sweet.
good to know, because she does actually like Winnie the Pooh and many of the offshoots of Winnie the Pooh. I never read it when I was a kid. We had the movie in French, and it's not that it was bad, but I feel like having seen it in English since, there was some pretty iconic voice work and actors doing decent voice acting in it that kind of helped its success.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? It is, the animations are for kids really, but if you have that sort of connection and nostalgia, I gotta say Christopher Robin was good. But anyway, it's enough that we're trying to cover 15 movies.
Yeah, okay,
tonight,
sorry.
and then we
Okay.
added Christopher Robin to the mix.
Okay, so one of my favorite movies, this is a bit of nostalgia for me. When I was in university, I took a course on literature and film, and the theme that the professor chose was all film noir. So we watched a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies, and I had heard of Alfred Hitchcock before this course, but I'd never really seen any of his movies. But we watched like 4 of them in the course of a couple months, and I enjoyed a lot of them. But the one that kind of still sits with me is Rear Window. It was partially weird because Jimmy Stewart is in it, and I know him from It's a Wonderful Life, and I've seen that movie probably 25 times. And he plays like the nicest guy in town in that movie. And in this film, he's a photographer with a broken leg, and he thinks he spies a murder happening in the building across the street, and it's this thriller. And what is interesting is that it really most of the film takes place in his apartment. So you'd think that would sound very boring, a guy in a wheelchair in an apartment not doing anything.
Right.
But somehow it does a great job of building suspense, and you really get inside his head and you start questioning if what he has seen has actually happened. And it sits with me to this day. I don't think I've only really watched it the one time, but it has stayed with me, and I got to give it props for having that much of an impact, even though I've only watched it once.
Oh, cool. Maybe I got to give it a shot. Where can people find this?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where the rights to Hitchcock's movies are. They're probably...
Is it an MGM property?
I'm not sure.
If so, it's probably going to end up on Amazon, but probably on one of their channels.
Speaking of channels, Beeper, what's your next movie?
Weird segue, but
yeah. What do you mean? Speaking of channels, your turn.
I am now channeling the right to speak, I suppose. This was higher on the list, but then I looked at it again, and I think I was putting these higher on the list because I was trying to be objective to the filmmaking quality, but then again, no, I'm putting these in where I like them. So in 4th place, I put James Cameron sequels. I specifically mean Terminator 2 and Aliens, which are both amazing films, very good, and sequels to good movies, but that kind of elevate the series, and I think are kind of like among some of the better sequel movies ever made, other than Shrek 2, obviously. But they're good movies I really enjoyed, movies that I think helped build on the first, like the original movies or the first entries that I also enjoyed, and really good filmmaking, amazing effect works for T2 as well, which is why I kind of had that, but I wanted to put Aliens as a kind of a mention too. And proving that you can make intelligent action movies, because both of them Like the first Terminator was kind of almost a slasher film, and the first Alien was definitely like a suspense horror. And yet, Aliens and Terminator 2 are action movies, but well-made action movies that still have a message and still work.
Yeah, I was staying at a hotel this past week and Terminator 2 was on, so I flipped to it and I'm like, this holds up. There's like not just the effects, but I'm enthralled and I care about what's happening, even though I've seen this before. So I 100% approve it being on this list.
I believe T2 was one of the reasons that Photoshop exists. It was one of the tools that I believe was created for some of the visual effects, because some of the merging of the T1000, the T101, like turning from texture into a picture was done frame by frame. For like not all, but like part of the transition was, and I think it was like Photoshop was developed for it, which is kind of cool.
That's cool. Okay, me now. Okay.
Sorry, next time I will officially channel the power back to Asian Jon.
Yeah, we should probably just like cut
Asian
that
Jon.
whole segment in there. Anyway, no, at least that whole silence there, that was funny. Okay, so I'm going for my next one here. I'm again continuing with that sort of vibe of things I loved as a kid and like held up, in watching it again as an adult. And this one is The Princess Bride. It's not, you would think with that title that it's, really sort of a romantic chick flick, but it's so funny because it's made in the 80s and it's not exactly a spoof. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's not over the top spoofiness, but it is just like ridiculous funny. I almost feel like the dialogue and the vibe of it could be like written as a screenplay. It's something you could imagine people, laughing at in the theater, like if they're going to live theater, and it's just absurd and awesome, and yeah, I think it's hilarious, and I could watch it often. Yeah, I guess that's how I'm judging these, is things that I can go back to and watch often.
I mean, that's a good standard. I think everything. Yeah, every movie I have on this list, I've watched at least 4 or 5 times.
Yeah,
well, I've already broken that.
I have to say, one of the movies on my list, which I'll get to later, it does break that, because it's, some movies when they're heavier, they're so good, but they're heavy, so you got to be in the mood. Anyway, so that's that Princess Bride. I'm sure a lot of our fans. I don't know if people have polarized feelings towards it. I think most people, it's either they're like, it's okay, or they love it. But I don't know anybody that hates it.
I mean, I watched it with my cousins when they were 2 cousins who were, I think, like 11 and 13 at the time, and it was their mom who suggested it. And she was like, no, it's actually good. One of them admitted it was good. The other one, I'm not sure if he actually was just trying to be contrary, but they didn't seem to enjoy it that much. But yeah, I don't think anybody's ever had like a really negative reaction to it. I can't imagine how you could.
Yeah.
It's got so many good gags that have become the source of so many memes.
Yeah, actually. Anyway. All right, pass it over to you, AJ.
All right, so I know they're cheesy and whatever, but I love those sports movies that like are often inspired by true events, but are dramatized to make them more interesting. And I grew up playing hockey, which is a sport that is not let's say, portrayed on film. You mentioned the Mighty Ducks. That's certainly a film about ice hockey.
So Harry Potter, Quidditch based movies?
No. There's a movie that came out in 2004. Disney put out. It was called Miracle. And this is a movie that was made about the 1980 Winter Olympics, where the American hockey team defeated the Soviet Union. And I don't know if it's because I grew up playing hockey, but I just really like that movie. I find Kurt Russell in that role as Herb Brooks so charming. And I feel so convicted. I'm like, yeah, I will follow you anywhere, Herb Brooks. I don't care if you make me skate back and forth and do suicides. Like, I will do it. And I'm not American, so I don't get all warm and fuzzy about, America beating the Soviet Union and the capitalism, Cold War, blah, blah, blah.
I thought that might make you hate it in a sense. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, we beat them first.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the idea is that it's at the time the USA was not as good as they are now, and also that was a time where both Canada and the US were pretty much throwing in our like college guys and our amateurs, while the Soviets were able to put in a lot of their best players, and we were kind of playing our C and D teams, So that it was just they were really facing giants because they were. Yeah, the U.S. wasn't supposed to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
I
classic.
don't know. I think a lot of Canadians just wouldn't want to watch it.
Would or wouldn't?
Wouldn't.
Really?
Like, even though it's about hockey, they'd just be like, "Ugh, USA, we get it." I mean, I don't care, but
it
I
doesn't
guess
feel.
when you said sport thing that is like inspired by true event, I don't know if it's inspired by true event, but that was like feel good. I thought of Remember the Titans.
Hey,
'Cause I
this is
really
my
like that
slot.
movie.
Don't throw more
Yeah.
movies in here.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
I guess, but that one is also American. I guess there aren't that many. Like, I don't know. Has it somebody made? I mean, I'm sure there's been a Canadian film about hockey other than Ball Cop Bad Cop, but like, I don't know if there's one that's particularly inspired. So I guess it works.
It just presents. It's the same classic underdog story that you see in a lot of sports movies, but
Yeah.
it's about the sport that I enjoy the most. And
Fair enough.
to me, the narrative of like Cold War, capitalism, communism, it doesn't feel forced. Perhaps for some it does, but for me it doesn't. And it ends with "Dream On" by Aerosmith in the credits, and I love that song too. So it's like the perfect dessert to a great meal.
yeah.
Sorry, you just made me want to watch Cool Runnings because you said underdog story.
Great. Now I have to write down Cool Runnings. All right.
All right,
I
back
love
to
that
you,
movie.
Beefy.
Wow. All right. Number 3, I put relatable animated movies, which
That's not a
specifically though
movie.
these two. I know, but look,
Narrow it down, bud.
if I had to pick one, all right, I'll pick Pokemon the first movie then. The other one was Megamind. I won't talk about it, but Pokemon the first movie, really good movie. First movie I remember seeing in theaters. And it was, I don't know, there was just something about it that I keep rewatching it and I keep liking it and remembering how weirdly powerful the message is for a Pokemon movie. And like, even though there's swaths of the movie that are just kind of Pokemon and not great, but like, I don't know, the and I think the character of Mewtwo just really, really hit me hard when I was a kid. Partially, I think because I'm gifted and, psychic powers is the power of the mind. And I latched really hard onto that. And the idea that the most powerful Pokemon at the time was, psychic type was really cool to me. And I also appreciated
you
the
psychic?
idea.
Is that what? Are you saying that you're psychic? That you're gifted?
No.
Is that what you meant?
No, I mean,
Oh.
but it is kind of analogous because like the only piece of media that I ever really identified with as a gifted kid is Matilda, who also develops psychic powers. So they do tend to like go together in media. Like people with psychic powers are hyper intelligent, and on the Pokemon card for Alakazam, it says it has an IQ of 5,000. So like there is something there, which really I kind of latched onto, and I think it also just has a good message about the circumstances of one's birth do not dictate who we are.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Yeah, I think Asian Jon missed the Pokemon craze, but I certainly do remember going to the theater with my friends to see that and getting the Pokemon cards at the door.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, when you're okay. So I had a younger brother who's 2.5 years younger than I am, and it was I feel like it was kind of his buddies that got into Pokemon. So I was just too old for it, and it's like when you see it as your little brother's thing, then it's hard to get into it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think I was just slightly the wrong age. So it's not. so I would confess my bias to not against it, but the bias to having not
Yeah.
paid attention to it.
I would actually recommend Pokemon the first movie just because
Yeah.
like the thing is I wasn't allowed to watch Pokemon and I didn't get
Right.
into Pokemon cards until a friend, like the older sibling of one of my friends, gave me his Pokemon cards.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I got the game and I loved it. But like at the time, I wasn't really into Pokemon that much. But this movie still really hit me, and I think it's like it's one of the like outside of nostalgia. Again, like you said, I haven't rewatched it, and I admit it has problems, but the central kind of character and message still holds up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm very forgiving of problems if there's like an overall goodness to it, right?
I would almost
can
recommend
suspend my disbelief.
AJ, if you were to watch it, you should probably watch it with Japanese subtitles, because I've watched a video where someone
Yeah.
shows all the parts that the English dub cut out of the movie that kind of make
okay.
it more.
So there's actual like significant changes in the dub version.
Fairly significant, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
you don't. It's not that you lose anything. It's that
It's
the
still
more
a
is
good
added.
movie in
I
England.
know, I like yeah. I
And
like
the voice
subs, though.
actor
I like
from
subs.
Mewtwo is amazing, and I don't know who it
Yeah.
is, but I really liked his voice. But like, yeah,
It's still
it has
different,
more
yeah.
depth in its original language.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I'll do that. I think I'll do it. I'll try to find it and do it. All right. Next, going for just a stupid comedy here. I love it. Again, it's about repeatability, rewatchability. Hot Rod.
Oh no!
Yeah, absolutely. Hot Rod with Andy Samberg and that Lonely Island crew. I think that movie is so funny. And I love, like, when people haven't seen Hot Rod and I'm like, let's watch Hot Rod, I love seeing them love it. That is all. I don't have to say anymore because I just, on the look on your faces, you guys are like, man, Jonathan is such a loser that he's not a
Well, I
geek."
mean, I do understand the concept, though. There are like some comedy movies that I love and that I grew up with that I'm like, yeah, this isn't maybe the best comedy movie, but it is good
yeah.
enough, and I want other people to watch it, definitely.
But this is an example of one that I just like. There's just moments where my laughter is out of control. Like, I just think it's so funny.
I just have memories of walking out of seeing it in theaters and thinking, oh, that was so stupid. And I think I just didn't.
Yeah.
My palate wasn't developed enough to understand like that kind of humor yet. But you made me rewatch it like years later at a friend's house, and I understood a lot better that second time around.
Okay. Yeah. So you so it wasn't as bad. You're not saying you liked it. You're just saying it's like the theater experience may have I guess made you think it was worse than it really is.
I think me watching as a teenager versus me watching as an adult in my 20s, I had a better experience when I got older.
Interesting. Anyway, well, to each their own, right?
Yeah.
All right, AJ, let's do it.
All right. Well, one movie that if you've followed this podcast for a long time, you've heard me talk about it fairly frequently. It was a movie I saw shortly after our podcast started, and I just fell in love with it, and I haven't shut up about it since. I'm talking, of course, about Moana.
Oh yeah, I was actually like, if Moana's not on the list tonight, I would have been shocked.
And I think it's because when I saw it, I had zero expectations. Like, all I knew about it beforehand was that The Rock was in it. And I remember vividly, I was in Montreal for the weekend with some friends. We needed something to do.
You watched it with me.
Did I watch
You and I saw it together. We saw it on.
Oh, that's
on the,
right.
At the,
Yes,
at the
I
Carlton
saw it with,
Cineplex.
That's right. I saw it with you first, and then I saw it in Montreal.
Oh, okay. So you saw it again in Montreal.
But
fair enough.
yeah, so
That's the proof that you liked it. You
For
saw
me-
it twice in theaters.
Yeah, here's the thing for me. I'm hurt right now because, like, first when you were saying Moana, I was like, please say Moana, please say Moana. I was so happy because it's like I shared that experience with you, man. It's like one of your favorite movies. I saw it with you, and I got to see you like mesmerized by its goodness and laugh at the silly jokes, and then like a little kid staring back, being like, "Daddy, why is that guy laughing so loud?"
No, that was when we saw the Lego Batman movie. That's when that happened.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I guess you didn't laugh as loud in Moana, but you were. I could tell you loved it, and afterwards you were just like, you were glowing. No, it really it made an impression on you. I liked it too. I had a very positive experience too, but you just loved it.
Yeah, it just
And I get it. It's really good.
yeah, it blew my I had no expectations, and it blew those expectations out of the water. Just everything about it, the animation, the music, the songs. I know the music and songs are related, but I'm gonna split them apart because I like them both for different reasons. And ultimately, this is a movie that I was able to connect with like on a deep spiritual level. There is I don't know if this was intentional, but there is certainly an underlying theme related to missionary identity that I, as a Catholic, picked up on and really resonate with.
Oh, totally.
Like
the heart, like the corruption of the heart, right? And then it being restored.
Yeah, and the
It was
forgetting,
really cool.
and the people forgetting who they are, and losing that, and like trying to reclaim that identity in the more modern age.
Yeah.
And ultimately knowing that it doesn't matter if people remember you as long as your works remain. I think that's a big thing for me, and like I've worked in ministry, and that's a really big thing, like a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but to remember that like it doesn't matter if people you minister to remember you as long as the effects of what you did for them remain.
Oh yeah, I agree. Agreed. Yeah,
and that was part of what.
Yeah.
The
legacy isn't you. The legacy is the legacy. It's the effects. Anyway.
Yeah. And Moana, even herself as a character, I find her very like, I got her Funko Pop because I was like, I need to have this character in my home more than just the Blu-ray. So I've talked about Moana a lot over the years. So
I was offended by the fact that there was a chicken with a learning exceptionality in it. I thought that was pretty offensive.
They had to give Alan Tudyk some role.
Voicing animals, it's the greatest.
Well, this animal, the voicing was very simple.
All right, Beeper, reel us in here.
All right, so my number 2 for my top 5 is
Counting Down.
Yeah. So I started with 5. I'm getting to the better ones. I put Edgar Wright, but I'll say Hot Fuzz. It is a movie I can put in at any time of the day, no matter how I'm feeling, anytime, any place. I can watch that movie and I will enjoy it. And almost every time I watch it, I pick up on maybe one or two details I hadn't yet. And I have seen this movie at least a dozen times. So it's, if anybody's a fan of Edgar Wright or doesn't know, like, it's just, really good cuts. Everything comes back in the movie. Like, everything in the first half of the movie comes back in the third act. You get really solid performances, a tight script, flawless editing, both video and sound. And it's just a fun comedy that is probably funnier than it should have been, given how silly the premise actually is.
Silly, but also, kind of similar to, Shaun of the Dead, how it's like, it's serious subject matter that the joke is about. That's so funny.
Yeah, like, I think the entire Cornetto trilogy is pretty close in that. Like, Shaun of the Dead, it gets really weirdly heavy. And, like, World's End is also really good. I think Hot Fuzz is just almost... Hot Fuzz is one of those movies that I'm like... I can't find anything wrong with it. It's not the best, and it's not, like, flawless. But everything about it is good. At least
it's very sound.
Yeah,
it's all like it's all.
I think you had me watch
fundamentals are all there.
I think Asian Jon, that was a movie you introduced me to, because I don't think I'd seen it before that.
No, it's good. Hot Fuzz is great.
I introduced it to tons of people. Yeah.
Nice. I like it. I think my number 2, counting down from 5, would actually be Grand Budapest Hotel.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, which is another what do you call it movie? Man, brain
Indie?
fart right now. Yeah, but what's the name of that director?
Oh, Wes Anderson.
It's Wes Anderson. Yeah, how favorite could it be if I couldn't even remember Wes Anderson? It's I find it one of Wes Anderson's lighter ones, like one that's just, it's in some ways it had more mainstream appeal because it was fun, and there were just like things that just anybody could enjoy. It wasn't so overly quirky. It was like quirky but fun quirky, whereas some of his other ones are just like, what is going on here? Especially if you're not attuned to that particular humor or style of filmmaking. But yeah, Grand Budapest Hotel was just, I saw it in the theater in Poland actually a few years ago when I was visiting my brother and my sister-in-law, and yeah, I leaving the theater afterwards, I just felt so good. It was just the kind of movie that's like you feel good after watching it, and then the next time I watched it, I felt good again. And I don't know, it's just awesome.
That's I don't know. I feel like that's odd because I a lot of people I know have watched that movie and just felt really sad because of the ending. Like not like deep sadness, but kind of like melancholy
Melancholy.
Like, yeah, I mean, I love that movie partially because it proves that Ralph Fiennes can play just about anything.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
It's so different from the roles he usually plays and the roles he's most known for.
Yeah,
are just so different from that, and yet he pulls it off flawlessly.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this. I have seen some of Wes Anderson's movies, and they always do come across like in the trailers as a little quirky.
Also, like a sort of weird gloominess to a lot of them. But somehow this, even though maybe aesthetically there was some gloominess, somehow just the way the story unfolded there was just some fun and charm to it as well.
Also, Willem Dafoe is a great villain.
Oh my
generally
goodness.
and specifically in that movie.
Yeah. In that movie, he's actually hilarious. It's like they took all the like the scariness of the fact that Willem Dafoe just looks scary, and he's got a strong looking face, and they were just like, let's just totally Willem Dafoe the crap out of Willem Dafoe, like, and just like make him as scary as how some people imagine he could be.
Yeah, people are seriously hoping that when he shows up in the new Spider-Man, that he'll ditch the helmet he had in the original movies, and they'll just like find a way to like incorporate his face into whatever goblin outfit he wears.
Oh yes, please. He was born for it.
All right, so mine aren't in order. So this just happens to be one of the movies that's hit me on an emotional level, and I think it's the same for a lot of people. But it's Good Will Hunting.
It's a good one.
It's of course noteworthy because it was one of the first movies that was written by actors. And I listened to an interview with Matt Damon recently where he was talking about how when they were writing this, there was kind of no precedent for actors to be also writers. They said that all they had to lean on was Sylvester Stallone and his involvement with writing the Rockies. They're like, well, he did it, so maybe we can do it.
That's an interesting stance to take, especially considering how much Rocky was like an all or nothing gamble for Stallone's career.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And I too have I have a fondness for Robin Williams, and he was probably when he passed away, that was probably the first time I remember being like choked up and actually like sad about a celebrity dying. And it was, of course it was all the worse because he died by suicide. And
it's how he died. That's really sad.
And knowing that he brought so much joy to my life and to the lives of so many others, but yet he couldn't find that joy within himself. That was heartbreaking. And I feel like every time I go back now and watch Good Will Hunting, it's like he's giving therapy to me and not to Matt Damon's character. And I don't know, it's just like adds an extra level of emotion to know that like he is no longer with us. Yeah, it cuts deep and it's engaging, and I love it, and
it's not your fault.
Why'd you have to say that?
It's not your fault. How do you like them apples? All right.
All right, Beeper. Here we go.
All right. Well, my number one favorite movie is really easy. It's Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. I mean, I prefer to consider the entire extended trilogy as one movie. But
I'll allow
if
it.
I have
I'll
to
allow
pick-
it.
I
if
will
have to
not.
pick,
I will
it's-
not. That is
okay.
too long for a single movie.
All right, then it's the Two Towers extended edition
I'll accept that.
with the appendices. No,
Oh my
and
goodness.
yeah, I don't know. I like. Do I need to explain or justify this? I think
No,
it's
no,
pretty,
not
like,
really.
You know,
Although
it's
I'm
Lord
not.
of the Rings.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure of that trilogy. That then again, I can't remember the differences between the extended editions of each of them and the original cut.
I've
but
never seen the original ones. I didn't
Oh,
see
okay.
them in theaters, and
Yeah.
when we got them on DVD, it was the extended edition. So I've actually never seen the theatrical cut of Lord of
Yeah.
the Rings.
So then, okay.
Yeah, that would be my only possible argument with you would be because it's amazing. It could be like, well, why not one of the other two? Because I love them as well.
And I'm not a Lord of the Rings person. I've made that very clear over the years. So, but you're not the first person to tell me that they think that Two Towers is their favorite. So what is it specifically about? Because you would think the middle part would be the one that's least satisfying because it's like it's not the beginning or the end.
I mean, so yeah, Return of the King swept the Oscars, but that was also kind of just retroactive
Symbolic.
for all three of them. And I
Yeah.
think it's just because the Two Towers has, I believe, some of the strongest emotional points, even though it doesn't have the conclusion. It has Samwise Gamgee's speech towards the end of the movie in Asciliath about hope and holding on to it. The Battle of Helm's Deep is a lot more about kind of facing down desperation, and as much as like I don't agree with Jack Nicholson that there were too many endings to Return of the King, but there is something about the last part that there is at least a good deal of it, which is resolving things that kind of need to get resolved. Whereas I feel like Two Towers just does what it wants to do. And even though it is juggling a few storylines, it does so in kind of a more direct way, I think, than Return of the King. And like Fellowship is great, but again, it is kind of but it is mostly a setup for things to come. And like it is really cool and really good to have a much more focused narrative for that one because you don't split as much into different storylines, but it is also kind of just the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like a really good appy.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's like I think like the Fellowship and Return of the King, I feel like there were just more demands on it, as far as like what it had to do. Whereas I think maybe one of the things that made Two Towers so strong is that it didn't quite have to meet those demands.
Yeah, and also, the way they wrote the script, like there were things that need to happen in the first and the last, but then they also had to figure out exactly where they'd cut for Two Towers in order to still make it an entertaining film. And I think that partially like a lot of the decision they made in writing the script and adapting the book into movies came down to those decisions for the middle part rather than the beginning and the end.
Right.
And I think that's also plays to one of the great strengths and why it was a really good adaptation because yes, a lot was cut out and quite a few things were moved around, but it was to make, a coherent movie, which is what an adaptation should be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, books aren't written with the same pacing, and so oftentimes if you were to be too literal scene for scene with a book, it just wouldn't make a good movie. So it's the reality. Yeah. Anyway, I like your pick. But my tops here, going to number one, is this might have been a toughie, but it's Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh.
I really love that movie. I really love both the main characters. By Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins. I mean, Red and Dufresne are the characters. Man, they're just I don't know, I was so enveloped by the story. I was so in it. I was so, I mean, not that, I can't say it's relatable. It's like I imagine myself being wrongfully accused and ending up in prison, but still that like there was something, his quest for literal freedom from prison and justice in his own life and what he desires, and that really that fortitude to like keep fighting and keep working. Yeah, I was really in. I was in the head of the character. I was really immersed into the story, and yeah, and I love their dynamic too. The two main characters, their friendship, and all of it.
I confess, I have not seen this. I've only seen parodies of it, like on
Really?
Robot Chicken. There's like one where they make it so it's about like the Joker and Batman instead of the actual character.
That was a very good parody, but you should watch this movie.
It's good, eh?
Yeah. I mean,
really good.
there's a reason it's in many different, professional lists listed as the greatest movie ever made.
It is?
Yeah. I mean, it's usually between that and Citizen Kane, and I don't
Right.
think that's a close fight at all. I think Shawshank Redemption definitely deserves the top spot.
Wow.
Also, Citizen Kane is just a different era too of filmmaking. It's a bit apples oranges in a lot of ways. Just the sophistication of stories and the way there's some eras that there's the emphasis of a certain type of pacing and movie, I don't know, timber to it or timber, I don't know. Yeah, so it's hard to compare them, I'd say, but yeah, Shawshank Redemption. A lot of people who I've talked to when I mentioned Shawshank Redemption are like, you know what, that might be my favorite movie too. They're like, when I think about it, it's just really, really good.
Yeah,
But I was
have it on
too
my
young. I
list.
was definitely too young when I watched it the first time. I was like, my parents wouldn't, if they saw this, they wouldn't be happy that I'm watching it. But whatevs, did it, loved it. That's the one for me.
I might have to like change my intro to say I'm a movie expert if I haven't seen this one, but definitely
yeah.
I'm walking away with some homework. I also haven't seen The Two Towers in its entirety. I've seen a section of one of the fight scenes. I have seen the entirety of Fellowship and Return of the King, but Two Towers has kind of lost me over the years.
I, for 7 years, watched the extended trilogy at least once a year.
That is dedication I do not have to that franchise.
It's not it's not dedication when you love it, I could honestly AJ, like in a sense I'm like lucky you get to experience it for the first time in its fullness. So I would actually take the time with friends who love those movies and actually try it and get into it. I think you'd really enjoy them.
Okay, that is actually a good segue towards my final favorite movie.
All right. Go for it.
Because it's a movie not too many people know about, and I love introducing it to people. I love sitting down with them and watching it and seeing how they react to it. And once
Batman, the animated Phantom, whatever it's called.
Yes!
Phantasm or whatever.
Asian Jon, I am so proud of you for remembering that.
Oh, well, yeah, but I totally botched the name, I'm sure. What was it called again?
I'll take
The Mask
it.
of the Phantasm.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You were close.
I mean,
you showed it to me and I loved it. Thank you.
So people know I'm a fan of Batman, and so a question I'm thinking is like, oh, who's your favorite Batman, or who's the best Batman movie? And I always feel like I have to articulate. It's like, well, the best
Sissel and Ebert.
It's like the best movie with Batman in it is probably like The Dark Knight or something. But I, as I've said on this podcast before, have many complaints about that interpretation of the character. So I don't feel comfortable saying The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. I don't, or whatever. Like I don't, and every live action Batman there's been, I've had issues with how the character is portrayed.
Except Val Kilmer.
He's got the best smile for sure. But
okay.
And this is of course, like people who listen to the show will know I've brought this movie up before. I have nostalgia goggles for Batman the animated series. That is how I was introduced to the character. But I will stand on this hill that is the most well-rounded, definitive version of Batman that has ever been introduced in any medium. And thankfully, they had that opportunity to make a theatrically released film off the success of the first season of the series. So yes, like when people
And it's
say,
not like it's a hot take here that you're giving either. Like a lot of people agree with you on this.
Yeah, but I would say not. It's a lot of people in the mainstream would just be like, "What movie?" So it's real Batman fans know about it, but had you not told me about it, I would have known because I'm just not in that. I'm not. I don't do. I don't read like DC comics or I don't do comic books really. But now tell me again why it flew under the radar when it came out.
much like Hook, it was not. It was kind of over. Well, initially it was supposed to be a direct-to-video release, and then like partway through the production, they were like, "Wow, this looks." The studio was like, "This looks really good. We should put this in theaters." So it was. It only had like 6 months to like finish making it. They had to like reanimate a bunch of stuff for theater screens instead of the TV 4:3 aspect ratio.
Right.
So it was rushed in the theaters. There was hardly any marketing for it. They put it out on Christmas Day. And you mentioned Siskel and Ebert, and I showed you their review of it. They reviewed it like 2 years after it came out because it totally flew under their radar. They didn't even know it was coming out.
Yeah.
And they kind of threw Batman Forever under the bus in their review because they said like, "Oh, like we overlooked this movie and it's better than the other Batman movie that's out right now."
Yeah. But again, was it also competing with something else at the time? Was there
Maybe, but I'm not sure. All I know for sure is that you're right, Beeper. I'm not in a minority here. There is a growing number of people. Like I'm amazed. I've seen at least 5 different video essays of YouTubers articulating what makes Mask of the Phantasm such a good movie and such a good Batman movie. So I'm not in the minority, but I do enjoy pulling this out at parties. Like, oh, like what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite Batman movie? And I'll say this, and people will generally be like, "What? What's that? I've never heard it before."
Funny.
So, and Beeper, I'm assuming you've seen it at some point.
Yeah, of course. And it also has the advantage of having Mark Hamill's Joker kind of shoehorned in it a little. Not quite shoehorned, but actually, no, he's quite important in the. Sorry, thinking about the flashback. Also, he's kind of shoehorned into the flashback, but he's relevant to the plot. And yeah, it's a real detective story, which is something I know a lot of people point out as being some of the better. Like, it's the kind of thing that I think The Dark Knight was kind of trying to do, but poorly. Was to show Batman as a detective.
Which apparently the Batman's going to do. Apparently that's going to focus on the detective side.
Well, I got to say the first, Batman, the first Michael Keaton one, I think there was a bit of that there.
He does some investigation, I guess. But that's more like but I think he's more like a chemist. He's like, "Oh, I can figure out why this is happening."
But I think after that, every single live action Batman movie wasn't. Yeah, it was more about the
was not as good as
the superhero. Well, I'm not even commenting on Keaton himself, but just that aspect of the detective, the investigator. It was a bit stronger in that. I'm not even saying it was better than any of the other Batman films, but it's better than some of them. It's better than Batman Forever, or what was the worst one again? The one with
Batman and
George
Robin?
Clooney and Batman and Robin that was awful.
Batman Forever is the worst. Batman and
Robin. You think it's worse than that one?
Oh, I
They're
mean,
both bad.
It depends who you're talking to, but I definitely think Batman Forever was worse because Batman and Robin had some really strong points and amazing casting. It just ended up not being great.
Right.
I enjoyed both of them. There's nostalgia goggles on those ones for sure, but they're not.
They are far from the list. Let's put it that way.
But there you have it. There are our favorite movies. I certainly enjoyed this conversation because I feel like I know you guys a little bit better now, and hopefully our listeners have learned a little something about us. I mean, for me, they probably could just predicted what I was going to say, but that's okay.
I'm actually proud of myself that I could tell what you were going to say.
So normally,
I did not. The only one I kind of called, and I don't know why, but I was pretty sure you were going to say Rear Window when you mentioned Alfred Hitchcock. It just seemed like your kind of Hitchcock movie. I don't know why. Like, I couldn't give you the reason, but I immediately thought that's what you were going to say.
So normally this is when we would go into the bat jar and look at our mail, but surprise, surprise, we don't have any mail this week. But we'll play a little clip here that reminds you how you can get a hold of us.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
And this is when we would normally go inside the bat jar to pull out a topic for next week. But Beeper, I do want to kind of give it up to you because next week the live action Cowboy Bebop series drops on Netflix, but we also have this new Ghostbusters movie that is opening up in theaters.
Did you say it's going to be on Netflix?
That's right. Yes.
Oh, great.
I mean, I don't currently have Netflix. Maybe I should get it for that.
Or we could talk about the new Ghostbusters.
I'd rather talk about Cowboy Bebop whether I see it or not. So, I even if I don't see it, I can, wait, have you seen the original?
I haven't seen all of it yet.
Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll just rewatch Cowboy Bebop this week because I have it on DVD, and then we can talk about it from that side.
I mean, I could also just password share. Don't tell Don't tell Netflix.
We'll see. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Okay, let's
at least get the first episode in.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't expect to. I will not have enough time to binge watch the entire, however long this season is of Cowboy Bebop. So if you have Netflix, it drops on Friday, November 19th. So we'll be talking about the live action Cowboy Bebop next week. Asian Jon, we want to thank you for coming back for this special occasion, this milestone episode. I cannot believe this show has gone on for this long. And of course, it was. I can't speak for Beeper, but I certainly enjoyed having you back tonight.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And I could tell Beeper liked it too.
I'm giving 2 thumbs up, which is not
all
obvious.
right.
That's the problem with us having cameras. Sometimes I'll do motions and then forget that I need to say it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, isn't that right, Beeper? And you're just like, you're nodding, and I'm like, that's not helpful.
Yeah, I did realize it eventually.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't remember any of that. But yeah, honestly, it was my pleasure. I'm glad you're still rolling and you guys are having a great time. And it seems like you're putting on a good show and yeah, making listeners happy and having a good time. And yeah, this was a lot of fun for me. And also it's good to see you guys, especially you, AJ, because nothing wrong with you, Beeper, but I didn't know you too well. But AJ and I were, we're good friends, and yeah, I just haven't seen you in a while. Are you playing this world's smallest violin?
No, I'm trying to do that TikTok heart thing.
Oh, okay.
You should know I don't know TikTok things. I sometimes watch the TikToks that Mjolnir makes before she posts them.
All right, we're gonna have to get a clean cut in here somewhere. Anyway, it was great.
All right. So until next time, when we talk about live action Cowboy Bebop, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Asian Jon.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
Bye-bye.
The opening to Cowboy Bebop is called Tank!